Besides me, 7 people participated in the fall mussel roundup on September 30th of 2023. They were Ashley Robinson, Nestor Novichenko, Madison Perez, Jesse Bendez, and John Zimmerman. My wife Ellen and our daughter Aggie provided logistical support. I towed the Dottie B to the mussel bed just before sunrise and returned to the house in the pontoon boat. There was a dense fog on the lake and the surrounding area, which slowed people gathering and delayed our departure. I took the first group in the pontoon boat, arriving at the bed around 9:15. We set out red flags, beginning at the south end and working our way north. We started documenting mussels beginning at the north end. The second group arrived at the house around 10:15, and I fetched them in the pontoon boat. We broke for lunch from 11:45 to 1. During the afternoon, 2 teams documented red-flagged mussels. They passed all the tagged individuals to Aggie and I, who weighed, measured, and photographed them. We worked until about 5 p.m. In the future, I intend to recruit someone to drive the pontoon boat, thus letting me concentrate on the science, undistracted by the duties of also being the skipper. We documented 221 live mussels that day, belonging to 6 species. More than 60% of them were fat muckets, Lampsillus silicoidea. The second most abundant live mussels we encountered were pond mussels, Lagumia subrostrata, constituting nearly 1 in every 5 live individuals. Giant floaters, Pyganodon grandis, were the third most abundant species, constituting a little more than 15% of our observations. Only 1 live specimen of each of the other 3 species were seen. Of these, the wavy rayed lamp mussel, Lampsillus fasciola, and the spike are listed as species of special concern by the Indiana DNR. The paper pond shell, Utterbachia imbecilis, is considered to be a widespread and common species, although it appears to be rare in Crooked Lake. 55 tagged individuals were recaptured. The vast majority were specimens of Lampsillus silicoidea. Because the bulk of our tagging efforts so far have focused on that species. 2 individuals of Pyganodon grandis were also recaptured. 11 empty dead shells were found. 10 of them were in good condition, meaning that they appeared to be in about the same shape as live specimens, other than being dead and empty. None were very weathered, which would have suggested that they had been dead for quite a while. I declare shells like that to be in poor condition. Fair shells are in a category between good and poor. There was 1 shell this time that I considered to be in fair condition. Taken together, we found evidence for the persistence of all of the 6 unioid species I've seen in Crooked Lake since I started working here in 2009. Over the past few months, I've investigated various ways to measure the sizes of mussels. Much of that is better left to a separate, so far unrecorded video, but one useful outcome is a method of photographic analysis I'm calling the lens-shaped slices protocol. Briefly, the procedure relies on a shell's caliper-determined length and measurements of 2 photos, one from above and one from the side. I have validated the lens-shaped slices protocol with museum specimens, demonstrating that it explains about 99.6% of the variation in the linear regression of predicted versus actual external shell volumes. This gives us a powerful tool to complement other ways we have traditionally used to express the size of our mussels. Again, comparing and contrasting their strengths and weaknesses is beyond the scope of this video, so suffice it to say that I think the lens-shaped slices protocol may provide us with sufficient accuracy and precision to detect growth over short time intervals, like between September and the following June. Although length alone is at best a quick and dirty expression of a mussel's size, it is used in many studies, and we continue to capture those data as part of our efforts. So, looking just at the length data that we acquired for the live fat muckets, we see here that they ranged from 62.6 to 103.7 millimeters long and averaged 81.8 millimeters. The distribution appeared to display a single mode, with 65 individuals falling between 80.1 and 90 millimeters long. Live giant floaters that we examined ranged between 53.3 and 100.5 millimeters in length, and a mean of 85.3 millimeters. Again, the distribution displayed a single, major, rather broad mode, ranging from 80.1 to 100 millimeters in length. Live pond mussels ranged from 66.7 to 94 millimeters long and averaged 78 millimeters. The mode was from 70.1 to 80 millimeters. When compared to one another, lengths of the three most numerous species didn't differ much from one another. However, I would point out that even just a quick glance at their profile images suggests that there is probably more to the picture than this sort of comparison based only upon lengths would suggest. For example, the one in the middle, subrostrata, has a much slimmer shell than either Silicoidea or grandis. During the 2023 fall roundup, we reintroduced the practice of weighing specimens, something that I'd done on and off at various times in the past and had fallen out of practice, partly because of the amount of time it requires. I decided to begin weighing mussels again last fall, but compromised by doing so only for live mussels that had been previously tagged. This summary of weight data from our tagged fat muckets reveals a picture of size somewhat different than that which you may recall from the length data. Here we see what may be a bimodal distribution that's rather symmetrical, rather than the skewed distribution that we saw with lengths. At any rate, the tagged Silicoidea ranged from 39.4 to 135.9 grams and averaged 74.6 grams. The volume occupied by a mussel shell and everything within the shell is a third way to express an individual size. One way to estimate the volume of a live mussel in the field is to use calipers to determine its length, height, and width, and then use the formula for the volume of a geometrical shape called an ellipsoid. Again, in the interest of time, almost all of the lengths, widths, and heights came this time from tagged fat muckets, revealing ellipsoid volumes ranging between 38.3 and 110.3 cubic centimeters. The class containing the most individuals ranged from 60.1 to 70 cubic centimeters, while the population average was 63.8 cubic centimeters. Analysis of photos using the lens-shaped slices protocol yielded a range of volumes for our tagged fat muckets from 39.4 to 92.7 cubic centimeters, which was broadly similar to the range calculated by the ellipsoid method. However, the lens-shaped slices protocol distribution appeared to be bimodal, which is reminiscent of the distribution for weights. I suspect that's because the lens-shaped slices protocol does a better job of capturing the shapes of different individuals than the ellipsoid method. This notion is supported by graphing the volume from the lens-shaped slices protocol for each tagged silicoidea against its weight. A linear regression explains nearly 92% of the variation in the data. Another potentially useful tidbit that comes from this analysis is that the mean density of these fat muckets was 1.396 grams per cubic centimeter. Their density ranged from 1.159 to 1.548 cubic centimeters. This density business may have some use in species identifications. For example, during last fall's Roundup, I was handed a tagged specimen, which took me aback, and I couldn't decide at the time whether it was a giant floater or a fat mucket. Since it was a tagged mussel, I went ahead and took its pictures and weighed it. Later, I used the lens-shaped slices protocol to determine its volume. Dividing the weight by the volume told me that the mussel's density was 1.025 grams per cubic centimeter, which is less than one would expect for a fat mucket, suggesting that this individual is actually a giant floater. Perhaps additional data might allow us to use density as a taxonomic characteristic to discriminate between the mussels inhabiting Crooked Lake. So, that takes care of what species we found and how big they were. There's still more data from the fall 2023 Roundup to summarize, but it'll have to wait for another episode. Until then, try to keep yourself busy and out of trouble. I wish I could promise to do the same, but I just can't. See you next time.